Thomas Robert Malthus. Numbers and People. We're in 1766, and a musician named Mozart is giving his first grand European tour at the grand old age of 10. In Bourbon, France, enlightened ideas are undermining the divine power of the church, and a revolution of gigantic proportions and transcendental consequences is being born. And speaking of revolutions, England is incubating a profound revolution that will change the course of humanity, the first industrial revolution. Still in England, in Litchfield County, and in the heart of an illustrious family of intellectuals, Robert Darwin is born. He will become a seasoned doctor of enormous proportions. And in Surrey County, Thomas Robert Malthus is born. He's destined to be the father of demography, the science and study of human populations and their development. A science that will serve as inspiration for revolutionary and dangerous theories that 60 years later the son of that rotund Dr. Robert Darwin will unleash on the world, making the foundations of humanity tremble and creating dissonance up until the present day. The seventh of the 8 children of Daniel Malthus, a wealthy man who professed great sympathy for French free thinkers, Thomas Robert's education was shaped by a personal friend of his father's, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and his Émile. So, Thomas spent much of his youth listening to his father's enthusiastic and passionate views of utopia. He was a great admirer of William Godwin, free thinker and father of anarchic communism, and Mary Shelley, the creator of that mythical and universally feared creature. But so much parental praise of reason in favor of the individual who regulates himself wisely in benefit of the communal system of living doesn't convince a young Malthus, who ends up being ordained as an Anglican priest and views life as more down to earth. In order to explain his point of view, he writes an extensive pamphlet which he publishes anonymously in 1798, titled Essays on the Principles of Population, in which he describes how human populations grow and how to predict the growth to plan for the future of humanity, which seems doomed to misery and starvation. Because one of the devastating conclusions of his theory was that human populations grow too fast in comparison to the resources available for sustainability. According to his theories, the population grows in geometric progression and the resources grow in arithmetic progression, which leads Malthus to the following conclusion: there simply isn't enough food for so many people, which will eventually lead to massive poverty and huge inequality. But Malthus points to 2 mechanisms that tend to balance the scale. On one hand, there is the preventive population control. In other words, decide not to have children while the economic situation doesn't guarantee their well-being. And as contraception does not yet exist, for Malthus this simply means sexual abstinence. There are also positive controls which have completely decimated populations throughout history: hunger, disease, and epidemics, wars, that all act with brutal efficiency. This reasoning, together with a huge amount of data that an extremely meticulous Malthus inserted into successive editions of his book, would lead Charles Darwin, the son of that obese doctor born the same year as Thomas Robert, to resolve a dilemma that was keeping him up at night.
When I happened to read Malthus on populations, it jumped out as a theory by which to work.
The "it" was Darwin's theory of natural selection, by which the best adapted species to their environment are the ones that survive in a world where competition is fierce and resources are always scarce. But man does not live in a natural world. What Malthus didn't realize, and it was happening in his lifetime, was that the Industrial Revolution gave the world a system of production that would allow the farming industry, among other things, to grow exponentially. At the same time, the discovery of microbiology and vaccines by the scientist Louis Pasteur, who was born during the Industrial Revolution, would help so many people live so much longer. But in many aspects, Malthus's ideas about demography and Earth's ability to provide food are very relevant today, particularly as a direct result from the Industrial Revolution, in voices that demand a responsible use of natural resources and restrictions on uncontrolled and unlimited growth which burden the planet with more than it can possibly endure.
The great great question is whether man will accelerate towards illimitable improvement or be condemned to perpetual oscillation between happiness and immeasurable misery.
Malthus was born with a cleft lip, which probably led to problems with his speech. This is also why we have such few portraits of him, even though he grew to be a very well-respected and influential man. Reverend Malthus had 3 children from his marriage to his cousin Harriet. This was in line with his economic status and theories. Curiously, Malthus doesn't have a crater on the moon named after him, but he's known as the patron saint of demography because after he published his studies, demography became the object of academic study. Up until his death in December of 1834, Professor Malthus continued teaching history and political economics at the East India College north of London. His students affectionately called him Old Pop or Population Malthus.